بيان حكم الزكاة في العملة الورقية وبيان الخلاف فيه بين العلماء. Clarification of the judgment of zakah on paper money, and the clarification of the difference about it between the scholars. اعلم أنه تجب الزكاة في النقد أي الذهب والفضة المضروب من ذلك وغيره. Know that it is obligatory to pay zakah for bullion, meaning gold and silver, whether it was printed or made into coins or otherwise. وأما غير الذهب والفضة من الأثمان, as for other than gold and silver amongst precious materials like diamonds, rubies, pearls, platinum, and other things that could be used for money, فلا زكاة فيه عند الإمام الشافعي ومالك وأحمد رضي الله عنهم. There is no zakah in that, according to Shafi'i, Malik, and Ahmad, may Allah accept their deeds. وتجب عند الإمام أبي حنيفة رضي الله عنه, and that is obligatory according to Imam Abu Hanifa, may Allah accept his deeds. فهذه العملة المستعملة في هذا العصر لا تجب فيها الزكاة عند الشافعي ومالك وأحمد. And so this paper money that's used in this time, there's no zakah obligatory for it, according to Ash-Shafi'i, Malik, and Ahmad. وتجب عند أبي حنيفة لأنها تروج رواج الذهب والفضة. And it is obligatory according to Abu Hanifa because it is circulated like gold and silver. فَمَنْ أَخَذَ بِمَذَاهِبِ الْأَئِمَّةِ الثَّلَاثَةِ, so whoever took by the schools of the three Imams, the other three besides Abu Hanifa, فَلَمْ يُزَكِّ هَذِهِ الْعُمْلَةَ الَّتِي لَا يَسْتَعْمِلُهَا فِي التِّجَارَةِ, and therefore he does not pay zakah for this money, this paper money, that he's not using for trade, I'll explain insha'Allah ta'ala. فَلَا يُتَعَرَّضُ عَلَيْهِ, then he should not be subjected to any objection. وَمَنْ أَخَذَ بِمَذْهَبِ أَبِي حَنِيفَةَ فَزَكَّاهَا أَخَذَ بِالِاحْتِيَاطِ, and whoever took by the madhab of Abu Hanifa and did pay zakah on that paper money, then he took by what is precautious. So let me not explain yet the issue of trade. Maybe a better spot will come up insha'Allah ta'ala to interject. I'll keep reading. فَإِنْ اعْتَرَضَ مُعْتَرِضٌ عَلَى الْأَئِمَّةِ الْمَذْكُورِينَ, and so if some objector were to object, or objector were to object to the mentioned Imams, قِيلَ لَهُ, it's said to him, لَيْسَ لَكَ أَن تُنْكِرْ, you don't have the right to object. فَإِنَّ مَذَاهِبَهُمْ تَلْحَظُ أن الله تبارك وتعالى ما ذكر في سورة براءة وعيدا إلا في من منع زكاة الذهب والفضة. For indeed, their schools take note that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala did not mention in Surah Bara'ah any threat except concerning the one who withholds paying the zakah of gold and silver. قال الله تبارك وتعالى, said Allah تبارك وتعالى, والذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا ينفقونها في سبيل الله فبشرهم بعذاب أليم. Those who hoard the gold and the silver and they do not spend it for the sake of Allah, that means they don't pay zakah, then give them the tidings of a painful torture. That's the 34th ayah of Surah Tawbah, which is also called Surah Bara'ah. وَاللَّهُ كَانَ عَالِمًا فِي الْأَزَلِ بِأَنَّهُ تَكُونُ أثمان من الذهب والفضة وغيرهما. And Allah was knowledgeable in eternity that there shall be money made of gold and silver and other than that. Meaning, despite that he knew that in eternity, he didn't mention that in the ayah so that it would be covered explicitly. Some people even wanted to teach Shafi'i school until they get to Zakah, and then they said, now let's teach Hanafi school. Because we don't have camels and things like that, and dates and raisins, etc. So you don't have to go there. This chapter of Zakah, according to Ash-Shafi'i and Ahmed and Malik, that is the presentation of the law of Allah Ta'ala according to them. And that's sufficient. So to whomever it applies, then it applies. And to whomever it does not apply, it does not apply. Once a sister asked me about someone who has many, many chickens, like a chicken farm. How much zakah? I told her there's no zakah. And she didn't believe me. She was offended. She thought I was teaching her wrong religion. فكيف يعترض على الأئمة المذكورين ومأخذهم هذا النص? So how would there be objection to the mentioned imams when their source is this text? فليس للحنفي أن يعترض على مذهب الأئمة المذكورين. And so a Hanafi has no right to object to the school of the three mentioned imams. ولا للشافعي والمالكي والحنبلي أن ينكروا على الحنفي. And the Shafi'i and the Maliki and the Hanbali has no right to object to the Hanafi. أما من قلب هذه العملة الورقية في البيع والشراء لغرض الربح فهذا تجارة. As for who flips this paper money in buying and selling with the goal of profit, then this is trade, tijara. Meaning, tijara is to sell something with the intention to make a profit, and with that profit, to buy more and then sell it for a profit. And then with that profit, to buy more and then sell it for a profit, and so on. It's not a condition that one buys the same thing again and again. Rather, he starts with some money and he buys some product, some merchandise, and he sells it to make a profit with it. And with that profit, he buys more merchandise. With that profit, with that profit from the first sale, he buys more merchandise, the same type or a different type, and he sells it for a profit. And with that profit, he buys more merchandise and sells it for a profit, etc. So that's tijara. So when someone is selling that paper money like that, which is valid, that's not riba. If a person buys paper money and sells it for a profit, and then with that profit he buys more paper money and sells it for a profit, that's not haram. It's not riba to get a profit from that. It's not like gold and silver. Then that's valid, but now he has gone into tijara, and then there's zakatu tijara, the zakah of trade. Zakatu tijara, then that's the zakah of value. That's the zakah of value. So let me finish this paragraph real quick, and then let's briefly talk about how that works. فَيُقَوَّمُ مَا عِنْدَهُ آخِرَ الْحَوْلِ. One would price what he has at the end of the year. Let's say he started on Ramadan 1st. He started his trade on Ramadan 1st. So at the end of the year would be what? Ramadan 1st, the next year. He would price what he has at the end of the year. فَإِنْ بَلَغَ قِيمَتُهُ بِأَحَدِ النَّقْدَيْنِ نِصَابًا. So if the value of that merchandise, so basically paper money is merchandise. Gold and silver are not merchandise. Gold and silver are bullion. You have two types of money. Bullion, naqd, gold and silver, and arud, merchandise. That's what we're going to call it here. If there's better words, then so be it. So paper money is merchandise, not bullion. Merchandise also includes wood, clothing, animals, etc. Anything other than gold or silver. So if at the end of the year, the value of this merchandise reaches the quota of the zakah of bullion, gold or silver, أخرج زكاة التجارة, then one would pay the zakah of trade. So here, let's try to make this clear and brief, insha'Allah ta'ala. So you have zakah of money, and you have zakah of bodies. Two types of zakah. Zakah of money and zakah of bodies. The zakah of bodies is zakatul fitr that you pay on the Eid after Ramadan. We're not talking about that. That's when you pay zakah for how many Muslim bodies you support. Yourself, if you're not married and you don't have any children, or for your wife and yourself when you get married, and the woman wouldn't have to because her husband's going to pay. So that's, with its details that we're not going to go into, that's zakatul fitr, the zakah of bodies. So then you have the other type of zakah, which is zakatul mal, is the zakah of money. The zakah of money is broken into two categories. Zakatul ayn wa zakatul qimah. The zakah of paying for the item itself. Zakatul ayn. Paying zakah for having the very item, for having camels, cows, sheep, goats, dates, raisins, cereals, staple crops, that you pay zakah for having that very item. You pay that item. Yani, if you have dates, what are you going to pay for zakah? Dates. Raisins, then you pay raisins. Except in the case of camels, sometimes when you have camels, and this is according to a Shafi'i I'm talking, sometimes when you have camels, you're going to pay sheep for zakah. And then other times when you have camels, you're going to pay camels for zakah. If you have cows, you're going to pay cows. If you have goats or sheep, you're going to pay goats or sheep. So that's called zakatul ayn, the zakah of the item itself. The other type of zakah is called zakatul qimah, the zakah of value. The zakah of value is zakatul tijara, the zakah of trade. That's when you're not paying the zakah because of the item itself, but because of its value. This zakah follows zakah of gold and silver. So, if you have gold or silver, according to the rules, according to all the proper details, you're going to pay as zakah gold or silver. That's zakatul ayn, zakah of the item itself. If you're a trader, a tajir, according to the definition that I gave you, then you're going to pay zakah for having the value of gold or silver, not for the item itself. So you might sell clothing, you might sell cars, you might sell all sorts of things. At the end of the year, you're going to price your inventory, whatever you have, and add to it the money that you have from the business, yani whatever cash you've generated. So you're going to price your inventory wholesale and add to that whatever cash you have generated from this business, this trade, throughout the year. And if that total equals the zakah of gold or the zakah of silver, then you're going to pay the zakah of gold or the zakah of silver, whichever one you started with. If you started your business with gold, then you're going to pay the zakah of gold for having that value. If you started your business with silver, you're going to pay the zakah of silver for having that value. If you started your business with other than gold or silver, then you're going to pay whatever is most dominant in the town. And then, yani, if you need more information past that, you can ask. So that's how it goes. So if your trade is by paper money, then at the end of the year, you're going to price your inventory, add to that any cash that you've generated from the business, and if that, and you see how much is that worth in gold, how much gold is that worth. So if you had that much gold, would you have to pay the zakah of gold? Or how much silver is that worth? If you had that much silver, would you have to pay the zakah of silver? If so, then you pay whatever would be the zakah of gold and whatever would be the zakah of silver. So if you have any question, go ahead and ask, inshallah. So let's make sure everything's clear. ومذهب الحنفية أن الفلوس إن كانت أثمانا رائجة أو سلعا للتجارة ففيها زكاة. And the school of the Hanafis is that money made from other than gold or silver, so it might be made from lead or nickel or copper, like this change we have today. People usually aren't walking around with golden things. That golden dollar, though, in America is supposed to have gold in it. The coin dollar, if I'm not mistaken, the gold one, not the silver one. It's supposed to have gold. I don't know how much is pure gold, if there is any pure gold in there. So the money that's not gold or silver, the coins, that's called fulus. Some people think fulus just means money. Fulus is the non-golden or silver coins. Pennies and nickels and dimes. I think in England they say pence. That's like cents. I don't know. So the Hanafi school is that the fulus, if it is circulated money or trade merchandise, then there is zakah for it. كذا في الشرمبلالية. That's the name of a book. Like that's what's documented in Ash-Shurambalalia. The name of a book. Okay, so I've said, I think, what I can say to clarify trade, zakah of trade. So again, if you have any question, go ahead and ask if you want. I'll continue. وَفِي الْفَتَاوَى الْهِنْدِيَّةِ. And it is documented in the book Al-Fatawa Al-Hindiyya, the Indian verdicts. It's a Hanafi book. وَأَمَّا الْفُلُوسِ فَلَا زَكَاةَ فِيهَا إِذَا لَمْ تَكُنْ لِلتِّجَارَةِ وَإِنْ كَانَتْ لِلتِّجَارَةِ فَإِنْ بَلَغَتْ 200 وَجَبَتِ الزَّكَاةِ كَذَا فِي الْمُحِيطِ. Quote, as for the fulus, there is no zakah in it when it is not for trade. And if it were for trade, then if it reached 200 dirhams, then zakah is due. Yeah, he says 200. I don't know the rules of zakah according to Hanafi school. So in Shafi'i school, you have, when it comes to silver, 200 dirhams. When it comes to gold, 20 mithqals, 20 dinars. When he says 200 here, he doesn't say 200 what? So I assumed right there from Shafi'i school, but I don't know what's the Hanafi school. So I'll just read what he has. If it reached 200, so Allah knows best, then zakah is obligatory. كذا في المحيط. That's what's documented in the book Al-Muhit. So that looks like that's a difference in the school. The first book says whether it's for trade or for circulated money, there's zakah. This book is saying unless it's for trade, there's no zakah. And both of those are Hanafi school. And Allah knows best. If there's some terminology that the Hanafis have there that I don't know, Wallahu a'lam. May Allah grant us the knowledge. Subhanallah. The one who worked hard and put the effort to learn one madhab and master it first, and then another madhab, and then another madhab, and then another madhab. Allah blessed him for his efforts and enabled him to write a book like this and understand all of the words that are there. But remember, don't try to learn many madhabs at once. You will probably not be successful. Learn one madhab at a time. أما غير الحنفية, as for other than the Hanafis, فقد قال المالكية كما في الشرح الكبير على مختصر خليل ما نصه. The Malikis have said, like what's documented in the big explanation of Mukhtasar Khalil, quote, وأشعر اقتصاره على الورق أي الفضة والذهب أنه لا زكاة في الفلوس النحاس. The authors limiting the case to silver and gold gives the impression that there is no zakah for lead money. وهو المذهب, and that is the school. Meaning, that's the case. Meaning, he's saying, what he said alludes to something. There's something he didn't say. He did not explicitly say, there's no zakah for lead money. He only said, there is zakah for silver and gold. So merely saying there's zakah for silver and gold gives the impression that there's no zakah for lead money. وهو المذهب, and that is the school. Actually, that's correctly the case. What's understood is the case. انتهى, and quote, وفي المدونة الكبرى للإمام مالك ما نصه. And in Al-Mudawwanatul Kubra by or for Imam Malik, yani cases that are documented about Malik, sometimes a book is attributed to a scholar, though he didn't with his own hand write it. And it would be because he dictated it, or it would be because it's his talk that was compiled. He didn't write it, but it was his talk that was compiled, and then it would be attributed to him. So, وفي المدونة الكبرى للإمام مالك ما نصه. Quote, قلت أرأيت لو كانت عند رجل فلوس في قيمتها 100 درهم فحال عليها الحول ما قول مالك في ذلك. I said, how about if a man had change, coins, that had the value of 200 silver dirhams, and then a year passed on them? What is Malik saying about that? Qal, he said, La zakata alayhi fiha. That one who has that does not have any zakah on him in that money. وَهَذَا مِمَّا لَا اخْتِلَافَ فِيهِ. And this is something about which there is no difference about it. Meaning in the madhab, in their madhab. إِلَّا أَنْ يَكُونَ مِمَّنْ يُدِيرُ. Unless he is someone who has a trade. Trade according to how I find it. Because, you might use the word trade in different ways, like a person who's works in construction might say he has a trade. We're not saying it with that meaning. فَيُحْمَلُ مَحْمَلَ الْعُرُوضِ. So then, that money would be treated as merchandise, as any other trade merchandise. Intaha, end quote. وفي كتاب فتح العلي المالك على مذهب الإمام مالك. And in the book فتح العلي المالك ما نصه, quote, and this is still Maliki school, ما قولكم في الكاغد الذي فيه ختم السلطان. What do you say about the parchment, that means the paper, that has the Sultan's stamp upon it? ويتعامل به كالدراهم والدنانير, and it is treated like golden and silver coins. هل يزكى زكاة العين أو العرض أو لا زكاة فيها? Is it paid as zakah on its item? You know what that means. Or is it treated as merchandise? Or there's no zakah for it? Yani, here, brothers and sisters, a lot of Muslims today are not strong in the chapter of zakah. So the words that I am using, you need to be mindful and keep them with you as we go through this so that you follow me. There are some chapters that the Muslims, the laymen who haven't studied well, are not strong in them. Among them is zakah, among them is hajj, among them is tayammum, and other things. Among them is inheritance. That's a big one, where people are ignorant about it. فَأَجَبْتُ بِمَا نَصُّهُ. So the author of this book says, I answered this way. Alhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina Muhammadin Rasulillah. La zakata fihi. There is no zakah for that. That paper money. That parchment. لِانْحِصَارِهَا فِي النَّعَمِ وأصناف مخصوصة من الحبوب والثمار والذهب والفضة. There is no zakah in it because of zakah being limited to the an'am livestock, camels, cattle, sheep, and goats. 4 types. Really 3 types. Sheep and goats are one category together, according to the Arabic, al-an'am. The ghanam, sheep and goats, camels, cattle, yani cows. I just recently knew that cattle, really, look, the word cattle works for an'am. An'am is camels, cows, sheep, and goats. The word cattle works for all of that. I didn't know that, probably because of my American English. I thought cattle was just cows as a type with their different kinds. But really, it's more than that. Cattle even includes the camels and the sheep and goats. But let's just not go there. Let's say camels, cows with their different types, including buffalo, water buffalo, for example, sheep and goats, and that's one category, the ghanam. So that's the meaning of na'am. Not more, not donkeys, not chickens, etc. He said, there's no zakah in that because of zakah being limited to the an'am and particular kinds of seeds like rice, wheat, corn, which are the nutritious cereals that are storable without treatment. You don't have to freeze them. You don't have to dry them. You can just store them. As long as they don't get wet, As long as they don't get infested, they will stay good. And they're nutritious means if you just eat them alone, you'll stay alive. Wathimar, particular fruits, that's dates and raisins. The dried fruit of the palm tree, the dates though, the date palm, not other palms, not coconuts, not pineapples. And the dried fruit of the grapevine, that's raisins. If the Malikis have any difference there, I don't know it. And gold and silver. Zakah is limited to that. وَمِنْهَا, and among what is subject to zakah is قِيمَةُ عَرُضِ الْمُدِيرِ, the value of trade merchandise. وَثَمَنِ الْعَرُضِ الْمُحْتَكِرِ, and the price of monopolized merchandise. I don't know though how to explain that. وَالْمَذْكُورُ لَيْسَ دَاخِلًا فِي شَيْءٍ مِنْهَا, and that which is being asked about, that parchment, paper money, is not included under any of that. وَيُقَرِّبُ لَكَ ذَلِكَ أَنَّ الْفُلُوسَ النُّحَاسِ الْمَخْتُومَةَ بِخَتْمِ السُّلْطَانِ وَالْمُتَعَامَلَ بِهَا لا زكاة في عينها لخروجها عن ذلك. And what makes that closer for you is that lead change that has the seal of the Sultan and is used as money, there's no zakah on its item. لِخُرُوجِهَا عَنْ ذَلِكَ, because it's not any of the aforementioned things. So likewise, the parchment, the paper money, is like that. قَالَ فِي الْمُدَوَّنَةِ, he said in the book Al-Mudawwana, وَمَنْ حَالَ الْحَوْلُ عَلَى فُلُوسٍ عِنْدَهُ قِيمَتُهَا 100 درهم فلا زكاة عليه فيها إلا أن يكون مديرا فيقومها كالعروض. انتهى. In Al-Mudawwana, it is documented that whomever upon him there has passed a year while he has change, that's not gold or silver, whose value reaches 200 dirhams, that's silver, then there's no zakah on him in that change, unless he uses it for trade. Then he will price it like merchandise. Intaha, end quote. So actually what's going on here is this book, Fathul Ali al-Malik, is still being quoted. So this is a Maliki book. Then he goes on talking here. But then here's the word intaha, end quote. So looks like that's the end of the quote, but it's not. It's not the end of the quote from the book. The book is still going. So what happened here is we're quoting this book, Fathul Ali al-Malik, in the Maliki school. Someone asked him a question. He said, this is how I answered it. So after he gave his answer, he said, intaha, that's the end of how I answered it. That's the end of my answer. And he's still talking from the same book. Now he's quoting a Hanafi book. وفي الطراز بعد أن ذكر عن أبي حنيفة والشافعي وجوب الزكاة في عينها. And in the book called At-Tiraz, after mentioning about Abu Hanifa and Ash-Shafi'i, the obligation of zakah concerning the item itself, واتفاقهما على تعلقها بقيمتها, and mentioning their agreement, the agreement between Abu Hanifa and Ash-Shafi'i, that there is zakah for the value of such money, not the item. They don't agree about the zakah on the item itself, but the value of it. In the case of trading, they do agree. وعن الشافعي قولين في إخراج عينها, and from Ash-Shafi'i there are two sayings about paying as zakah the item itself, the item of the money. And maybe that, what he's saying here, maybe that's an old saying of Ash-Shafi'i, but the fatwa in the Shafi'i school is that there is no zakah on money other than gold and silver, on the item itself. قال والمذهب أنها لا تجب في عينها إذ لا خلاف أنه لا يعتبر وزنها ولا عددها وإنما المعتبر قيمتها. وفي الطراز, in the Hanafi book الطراز, after mentioning the difference of Abu Hanifa and Ash-Shafi'i about the zakah, the obligation of zakah concerning the item itself, and mentioning their agreement about the value, and that Ash-Shafi'i has two sayings, which perhaps one of those sayings is his old saying, because it's known that the fatwa in the Shafi'i school is that there is no zakah on the item of those non-golden or silver monies. He says, وَالْمَذْهَبُ أَنَّهَا لَا تَجِبُ فِي عَيْنِهَا. The madhab is that it's not obligatory to pay zakah for the item itself of that money. إِذْ لَا خِلَافَ, because there's no difference, أَنَّهُ لَا يُعْتَبَرُ وَزْنُهَا, that the weight of that money, that non-golden or silver money, its weight is not considered. Like gold and silver, the weight is considered. وَلَا عَدَدُهَا, nor the number of those pieces are not considered. وَإِنَّمَا الْمُعْتَبَرُ قِيمَتُهَا, merely what is considered is its value. That non-golden and silver money, what is considered, what is regarded, what has any regard concerning that money is the value. فَلَوْ وَجَبَتْ فِي عَيْنِهَا لَاعْتُبِرَ النِّصَابُ مِنْ عَيْنِهَا. So had the zakah been due on the item itself, then the quota would be considered. The quota would be considered for the item itself. Like in other things that have, don't you have, if you have 5 camels, if you have 40 sheep or goats, لَعَتُبِرَ النِّصَابُ مِنْ عَيْنِهَا وَمَبْلَغِهَا لَا مِنْ قِيمَتِهَا كَمَا في عين الورق والذهب والحبوب والثمار. So, لو وجبت في عينها, had it been obligatory to pay the very item of that money, then the quota would have been considered for the very item itself and the amount of that very money itself, not the value of it, because there's a difference. كما في عين الورق والذهب, just like is the case in the very item of the silver and the very item of the gold and the very item of the seeds and the very item of the fruits. That's what's regarded for them, not their value, not their value. So what if you had some very nice Aztec gold and I had some, I don't know, some Pennsylvanian gold? Then maybe one of those has more value than the other, but that value is not what's regarded for zakah. It's the weight. فَلَمَّا انْقَطَعَ تَعَلُّقِهَا بِعَيْنِهَا. So when it was that the item itself was disregarded. جرت على حكم جنسها من النحاس والحديد وشبهه. Then the rule went to the judgment of that type of thing, such as lead or iron and the like of that. والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم. And Allah knows best, and may the blessings and supplications be upon our Master Muhammad and his family. انتهت عبارة فتح العلي المالك. That's the end of the expression of that Maliki book, فتح العلي المالك. ومذهب الحنابلة كذلك. And the madhab of the Hanbalis is like that. ففي شرح المنتهى, in the explanation of المنتهى, الفلوس ولو رائجة عروض. Change that's not bullion, even if it's circulated as money, is truly merchandise. والعروض تجب الزكاة في قيمتها. And merchandise, when it comes to merchandise, zakah is due on its value, not the item itself. إذا بلغت نصابا, if that value reached the quota of gold or silver. إذا ملكت بنية التجارة, if it was owned with the intention of trade, مع الاستصحاب إلى تمام الحول, along with the passage of a year. أما لو ملكها لا بنية التجارة ثم نواها فلا تصير لها. As for if one owned that merchandise that's not bullion, not having the intention of trade, and then he intended trade, it will not become part of his trade merchandise. Meaning, you have money and you want to start a business. So you buy some merchandise with that money to sell it for a profit, and to buy with that profit more merchandise, etc., as we've already explained. Then when does your year start? Meaning that merchandise that will be subject to the zakah of value. When does your year start? When you buy your merchandise. The year starts. Not when you sell the merchandise, when you buy it, when you own it. When you own that with the intention of trade. That's what he says there. إذا ملكت بنية التجارة. As for if you already owned it, not with the intention of trade, like something you have in your house that you could use as merchandise, but you weren't intending to use it to sell it for trade, your furniture or anything. And then you said, I think I'll sell these for a profit, and then with the profit, I'll buy more to sell for a profit, etc. Then, by that mere intention, your year does not start, because you already owned it. Now your year will start when you sell it. That's what he's saying there. Wallahu a'lam. Intaha, end quote. وَمَذْهَبُ الشَّافِعِيَّةِ كَمَذْهَبِ الْحَنَابِلَةِ وَالْمَالِكِيَّةِ. And the school of the Shafi'is is like the school of the Hanbalis and the Malikis. أَنَّهُ لَا تَجِبُ الزَّكَاةُ فِي عَيْنِ الْعُمْلَةِ الْوَرَقِيَّةِ. That there is no zakah obligatory in the item of paper money. نص على ذلك الشيخ محمد الأنبابي الذي كان يسمى الشافعي الصغير. Who documented that was Sheikh Muhammad al-Ambabi, the one who was called Little Shafi'i. وغيره, and others. وغيره نقل ذلك عنه وغيره, and others. نقل ذلك عنه صاحب كتاب موهبة ذي الفضل, and who logged that about him was the author of the book موهبة ذي الفضل. والأنبابي من علماء القرن الثالث عشر الهجري. And this Anbabi, this Sheikh Anbabi, he's amongst the scholars from the 13th century, the 13th Hijri century. تولى مشيخة الأزهر مرتين. He was given the position of the head dean of Azhar University twice. So that means he's a scholar, he's a strong scholar. Wallahu a'lam, and Allah knows best.